Back here in the Capitol, a sidewalk counselor named Deborah Vitaliano is fighting at our nation's highest court for the rights of people like her to help save lives. Vitaliano has petitioned the Supreme Court to reconsider a case from 2000 known as Hill versus Colorado. The decision in the case allowed Colorado to establish 100-foot buffer zones around abortion facilities. This led some other states and many smaller localities to institute buffer zones as well. Vitaliano, for example, hails from Westchester County in New York, where authorities have demanded a 100-foot buffer zone around abortion facilities. Though the Supreme Court justices have made no indication yet that they will take up her case, she's gained mounting support from people across the country who are being blocked from saving lives due to these buffer zones. Joining us now is Mark Rienzi, President and CEO of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. He is the lead attorney on this case. Mark, thanks for being here. Becket is defending Deborah Vitaliano in this case, so can you share a bit of her story and why you're bringing this to the High Court?
Sure. Deborah Vitaliano is a Catholic woman who has worked with special needs children her entire life and believes in the sanctity of all human life and wants to help women and wants to help save babies. And she wants to be out on the sidewalk offering help to women in need. But Westchester County, following this old bad Supreme Court decision called Hill, has made it illegal to approach people and just offer them help unless you first get express consent for the conversation. And that's inconsistent with the First Amendment and unlike the way we do, speech with our neighbors all over the country on any other issue.
I see. And Hill versus Colorado is not a case that most people know about, but it seems to have had a broad impact on people's ability to save lives on the sidewalk. About how many localities have buffer zones, and why haven't people talked about this before?
Well, it varies. There are different kinds of buffer zones in different places, but several states have them. Several big cities like Chicago, for example, has one. So these zones exist, and what they do is they make it harder for pro-life sidewalk counselors to offer women help and to offer them an alternative. And we know from the studies that women who seek abortions often do it for very tangible, real-world reasons, like they need help or they need somebody to support them. So many of these women actually really welcome the conversation when it can be offered to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And are you hopeful that the Supreme Court is going to take up this case? Last year, 5 of the justices said that the Hill decision was a major departure from our nation's protection of free speech, as you just alluded to.
Yes, the Supreme Court has recently said that the decision was a departure from the First Amendment. And the truth is, when the case was decided, the ACLU said the sidewalk counselors were right. Liberal law professors, conservative law professors across the spectrum said this is not how we do free speech law. So it's a bad decision. It was a bad decision when it was made, and I think the court really does need to just fix it and make it so that people can speak freely on public sidewalks and really offer help to their neighbors in need.
Yeah, and I'm curious if you could explain kind of the way that states have adopted these buffer zones. I understand Colorado adopted one after this case was decided, obviously, and other states have as well. How does that come up against pro-life laws that ban abortion in those states?
Yeah, so what happens is the state legislatures, often at the behest of the abortion clinics, pass laws to make it harder to engage in sidewalk counseling. And so this particular kind of law, some people call it a mother may I law, says you can't get within 8 feet of somebody within the zone unless you first ask for permission, which of course is just not the way anybody interacts with their fellow citizens in the normal course at all.
Right.
And so states have these laws. The real shame of it is the place where these laws are cropping up more and more is the jurisdictions that choose to allow abortion. So you have more abortions happening in the pro-abortion jurisdictions, and in those same jurisdictions, they're making it harder to offer women in need the kinds of help that often let them make the choice to keep their baby.
Very frustrating for those pro-life sidewalk counselors, I can imagine. Mark, before I let you go, 5 pro-life advocates are currently facing a potential prison sentence after entering an abortion facility and allegedly violating the FACE Act. Now, some pro-lifers question the legitimacy of that law. Clearly now in this case, the constitutionality of Hill versus Colorado is in question. What's your take on the legal attacks that we're seeing against pro-life Americans across the board who are often the last line of defense between children and their killers?
Yeah, there's no doubt we're seeing very aggressive enforcement of those kinds of laws by the federal government, by the Biden administration. And to me, I think the aggressive enforcement of those laws just really drives home the fact that we at least should be able to all agree that peaceful conversations on public sidewalks, the government shouldn't be putting people in jail for. So they've got laws for violence, they've got laws for obstruction. They are super aggressive about enforcing those. But the idea that we would also give them the ability to imprison people who are just trying to offer women a peaceful alternative on a public sidewalk, that's really bad for women, and it's bad for babies, and it's wrong, and it's unconstitutional.
Well said. Mark Rienzi of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Prudence.